is a Powhatan kitchen. I'm going to go ahead and assume it does not look like your kitchen at home, although I have been mistaken about such things in the past. I'm going to go ahead and pass this along so you can take a look at it. Please use 2 hands if you can, as it is kind of heavy, and pass along rather quickly since there's a lot of you. But this is a Powhatan utensil or a pot that they would have used. And we use pots nowadays for our cooking, but they look a little different than that. How are our modern pots different than the stuff that the Powhatan are using? One at a time, please, and if you could raise your hand, you're competing for sound. Yes. They have handles. Modern pots tend to have handles, certainly. Anybody else? Any other? Yes, sir. Ours are made out of metal, certainly. Any other differences? Flat bottoms, certainly. Modern pots tend to be have flat bottoms on them, cylindrical in shape. Anything else anyone can think of? Lids, certainly. So let's take a look at each one of these differences in turn. First off, the material it's made out of. Do the Powhatan have a lot of metal available to them? No. Before the English arrived, the Powhatan have access to one type of metal. And that metal is copper. It's being used as a status symbol, traded down from the Great Lakes region. Something that the chiefs and the priests would wear around their necks as a medallion. And even today, we wear precious metals around our necks or in our ears to show kind of status. But you're not going to find a whole lot of gold and silver saucepans lying around in your cupboard. So, same thing for the Powhatan. They're going to use a more common material to work and build those pots. And the Powhatan are going to be using clay, which can be found pretty much anywhere. In fact, you're probably standing on it if you dig down enough. But also by the riverbank. It can be scooped up and molded into different shapes. But the Powhatan are choosing to make it into this shape. It's kind of cone or acorn shape. And there's a reason for that, just like there's a reason why our modern pots are flat. Why are our modern pots flat? Yes. So it'd be easier to set down. And what are you setting it down on? A stove, yeah, a flat stove. That's how we cook our food nowadays, on a stove or in an oven. The Powhatan, however, don't have those materials. They have the fire and they have the ground, and so they're going to be cooking them where they can, on the ground. And the thing about the ground is that it is not as flat as a stove. It can be molded, it can be kind of shaped, so you can stand a pointed pot up on there. And what the Powhatan will do is they'll surround the bottom pot with hot pieces of charcoal or pieces of burning wood to heat it from below. Now, if you had a flat bottom pot and you were to stick it on top of those hot pieces of charcoal, what's going to happen to the charcoal in the center? I'm sorry, you'll have to speak louder. It'll die out. It'll die out, yes, it's going to die out. Why will it die out?
No air.
No air, no oxygen, exactly. This way, it allows oxygen to get all up underneath there and continuously heat it for a long period of time. And that turns out to be really useful for a reason we'll get into in just a moment. But what about a handle? What does a handle generally imply you're going to be doing with something?
Moving it.
Picking it up, handling it, certainly. And a lid generally implies a very high temperature, high speed cook. So with all of this in mind, what the Powhatan are going to do is they're going to have a kind of they're going to slowly bring up the heat over a long period of time without really having to worry about it going out over a long period of time. Basically, in terms of modern cookware, the closest equivalent to this would be kind of a crock pot. Something to be set up and not really worried that much about. And that's the reason that's kind of the way the Powhatan are cooking on most days. They'll set up a pot of soup in the morning and let people come by and help themselves to it as the day goes by. And there's a reason for that. It has to do with the people doing the cooking. Usually in the Powhatan society, it's the job of the women to be the cooks. But what else did we mention earlier that the women are going to be doing throughout much of the year?
Tending the crops.
Farming, exactly. And if you're farming all day, do you really have time to be making a bunch of meals? Not really, no. So instead, you can make up a soup in the morning, and people will come by and eat when they get hungry. Now, what do we like to eat with our soup? Even today, what do we like to eat with our soups? Bread, precisely. And the bread the Powhatan are making isn't going to be made out of wheat, but what is it going to be made out of? Corn, exactly. And the Powhatan can grind that corn up out of, grind that corn up in corn grinders like the ones that you saw outside the Yahakins as your way out. Mix it up with some water, make it into a dough, and then from there bake it into a couple different options. You could put it into the soup like a dumpling and boil it up. You could wrap it in corn husk and kind of boil it like a tamale. Or you could even wrap it, not even wrap it in anything, just put it right into the ashes of the fire and cover it up and bake it that way. And each one of these three methods is kind of mentioned by the English as being ways that the Powhatan would bake their breads. And they're all actually pretty tasty, in my opinion. The Powhatan can also do what with this thing? What can you do with this thing here?
Rotisserie.
You can rotisserie, or more accurately, you can roast things. A rotisserie kind of needs it to be constantly turning, but you're not going to be able to constantly turn it. But you can also dry things, smoke them. You can bake them by like a fish. You can bake a fish by wrapping it in clay and sticking it underneath the hot pieces of charcoal. You can make all kinds of different dishes. So, with all of this culinary technology and the architecture and the agriculture and the politics, does this sound like a people that are just trying to scrape by an existence and survive day to day? Or does this sound like a people that have created their own culture and civilization for themselves over a long period of time? I think so too, and I hope I was able to convey at least part of that to you in these 30 minutes. Now, we do have, let me check, we do have a little bit of time left, so if we could take this time to answer any questions you guys have about anything that I didn't get a chance to, that you might be interested in.